All right, it's time for the final four, the semi-finals. We will also have the finals today as well, so stay tuned for that. I created a tournament where all of Canada's premiers have been competing in elimination games. We started with 16 contestants. Yes, I know we only have 13 provinces and territories, but I decided to include Mark Carney because why not? I also included Donald Trump because he's been talking sideways about making Canada the 51st state. And I included Cindy Woodhouse-Napenack, the Assembly of First Nations National Chief. If you haven't watched the first two rounds, you can go watch it after this. Wab Kinew has been on a weird run. He's been on a tear. He eliminated Danielle Smith of Alberta in the very first round, and then he eliminated Tim Houston of Nova Scotia in the second round. So right now we're down to the final four. It will be David Eby versus Wab Kinew in the first matchup. The second matchup will be Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, of course, going up against Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. We'll see how that goes. I can't say I agree with all the decisions the AI has made to this point, but this is why I allow the AI to make these decisions. It's supposed to be impartial, right? I've given the AI 4 scoring categories. Number 1, policy and delivery, which just means, did these contestants get things done? Did their policies solve real problems for you and I? And do they match what they promised? The second scoring category I gave the AI, leadership and crisis. How did they perform under pressure? Were they steady, decisive, and effective during hard times? Sort of like what we're in right now, especially with these trade negotiations with the US and these tariffs, right? The third scoring category was public trust and approval. So do people respect and support them? Are they seen as honest, popular, and re-electable? And the fourth scoring category, vision and influence. So do they think long-term? Have they shaped the conversation or set a bold direction for their province? And the final scoring category was X factor. This one can be anything you like. What makes them stand out, good or bad? Do they bring unique energy, identity, controversy, or power? So those were the 4 scoring categories I gave the AI. And somehow we've ended up with 2 NDP premiers in the final 4. Anyways, let's see who stays and who goes. Here's the first matchup. David Eby, Premier of British Columbia, going up against Wab Kinew, Premier of Manitoba. David Eby has been Premier for 3 years, and Wab Kinew has been in office for 2 years. Let's see how this one goes. Incredible. Wow. Wab Kinew wins 44-39. On policy and delivery, it was a draw. On leadership and crisis, it was a draw. On public trust and approval, Wab Kinew gets a 10. Yo, all right. Look, I can't say I'm mad about David Eby getting eliminated. As I said before, I'm not convinced that David Eby is a good premier. But this scoring of Wab Kinew is kind of wild to me. Like, how does Wab Kinew get a 10 out of 10 in public trust and approval? I mean, how? How? Like, he's a politician, is he not? Like, how does he get a 10 out of 10 on public trust? And that's really where he has run away with this matchup. You know what? You guys in Manitoba, you guys got to help me out here. Are we sleeping on Wab Kinew? Is he as great of a premier as this AI thinks he is? You guys let me know in the chat, okay? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, as usual, I've asked the AI for some justification. And here's how it's justified the scoring here. So the pros for David Eby, on policy and delivery, David Eby pioneered ambitious housing reforms by ending single-family zoning, which enabled density. BC now leads North America in pro-housing zoning, says the AI. On leadership and crisis, David Eby has been proactive on cost of living, on tariffs, and on wildfires, and his approval ratings are steady around 56%. So what are the cons for David Eby? On trust and approval, while he has strong approval in BC, around 56%, he isn't nationally dominant. He isn't as nationally dominant as a Wab Kinew, and that's why he's lost on trust and approval. On the X factor, he's more of a policy wonk than a charismatic leader, says the AI. So why did Wab Kinew win? Here are the pros for Wab Kinew. He implemented fuel tax relief, pharmacare expansion, new health clinics, and aggressive budgeting. On leadership in a crisis, he maintained unity and effectiveness during wildfire evacuations, and he's seen as steady hands on provincial issues. Interesting. On trust and approval, he has the highest approval of all the premiers in Canada, which is around 68%, the best in class. Interesting. Vision and influence. He is the first Indigenous premier in over 130 years and shapes national conversations on energy, reconciliation, and unity. On X Factor, he has a blend of charisma, symbolism, historical significance, and centrist appeal. So what are the cons for this great premier? He's got policy limits. Some of his initiatives, like the ambitious energy corridor, have sparked internal debate. He's also newer in office compared to David Eby. Interesting. Well, there you go. Wab Kinew wins the first matchup of the semifinals. He is through to the final. Anyways, let's move on to the second matchup. We've got the battle of the progressive conservatives. It is Mark Carney versus Doug Ford. Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, of course. Could be a tough one because Doug Ford is one of the longest serving premiers. He's been premier of Ontario for 7 years. Now, I've been calling this one the battle of the progressive conservatives because I don't really see Carney as a Trudeau-style liberal at all, in my opinion. I think he governs very much on the right, although not so far right that he could pass for a conservative. Anyways, let's see how this one goes. Wow, incredible. Mark Carney wins 44-37. He has hammered Doug Ford here. Now I'm curious how the AI justifies this one. He's on Mark Carney. What are the pros for Mark Carney? Mark Carney repealed the consumer carbon tax and implemented income tax cuts and first-time homebuyer GST relief. He introduced Bill C5 to fast-track infrastructure and took decisive action like retaliatory tariffs, which safeguarded auto jobs. Yeah, that last part was a little bit exaggerated. What retaliatory tariffs, man? What retaliatory tariffs? I bet the people who have lost jobs in Ontario will tell you that he is not safeguarding shit in terms of auto jobs. But anyways, as I said, my opinion is not really involved here. But the AI thinks he's done a job that is worth a 9 out of 10, apparently. On leadership and crisis, the AI says Mark Carney expertly navigated U.S. tariffs and annexation threats. This is hilarious. Oh, and and his navigation of U.S. tariffs and annexation threats helped him to surge in the polls, and he remains widely seen as the top federal leader to handle the Trump era. I don't know if I would say Mark Carney is expertly managing the Trump negotiations. I've not seen any results, but anyways, let's keep my opinion out of this. On public trust and approval, Mark Carney gets a 9 over 10 because the AI says he has historic high prime ministerial approval ratings, peaking at 67% and over 50% nationwide trust, which outpaces Trudeau in his early days. And on vision and influence, Mark Carney brings global central banker discipline and gravitas. Canada's image has shifted toward economic stewardship and national sovereignty. Interesting. On the X Factor, he also scores a 9 out of 10 for some reason. The AI says he's the first premier from outside elected office, and he is a symbolic break from the past. Some might say he was Trudeau's advisor for 5 years, just 5 years before he got elected. I don't know if he's a significant break from the past, totally in that way, but yeah, that's what the AI said. What are the cons that the AI has picked up for Mark Carney? He's got that technocratic distance. His globalist image may alienate populist segments, and he's perceived sometimes as an elitist. Yeah. Yep. That's bang on. That's pretty accurate. There's also high expectations on Mark Carney, which is a con because achieving aggressive housing and spending targets remains a challenge, and he has got mixed public confidence in what he can do. What are the pros for Doug Ford? Doug Ford pushed through significant reforms like Bill 23, which is more homes built faster, gas and diesel tax cuts. He expanded healthcare funding and snapped a hardline response versus the U.S. tariffs. But then he doubled back on a lot of those responses. I don't know what this is. On leadership and crisis, he took charge during trade tensions. Yeah, I'll say he's done good. He's been capped in Canada. I like that about Doug Ford, actually. Public trust is stable around 44 to 49% approval ratings. Strong re-election margin in Ontario. He, of course, just won another majority government. On vision and influence, he wields significant influence beyond Ontario. His national media presence is, of course, immense. And he's got that populist messaging which shapes the federal discourse. And the X Factor, the AI says he's a charismatic, media-savvy, polarizing, yet effective leader. So why did Doug Ford lose? The Greenbelt scandal was a major one. Deficit expansion under Doug Ford. And environmental backtracking has dented his credibility. He's also a polarizing figure. His populism energizes his base but alienates others, limiting crossover appeal. So, why did Mark Carney win this? Mark Carney wins decisively 44 to 37 because of his transformative national policy, historic approval levels, global economic credibility, and crisis competence. For Doug Ford, while he delivers on strong provincial leadership, but his approach is anchored in populism and lacks the gravity of Carney's technocratic stewardship. Well, it's time for the main event. We will have Mark Carney going up against Wab Kinew in the final. For all the marbles, who will be crowned Canada's best premier? Get your bets in right now. It's all fun, okay? It's all fun. We're not actually gambling here. If you do gamble, gamble responsibly. But who wins this one? Who will the AI pick as Canada's best premier? Drum roll, please. I'm about to reveal it. It is... Whoa! It is Mark Carney by 2 points. Mark Carney wins 47-45. It came down to 2 points. That is crazy. Right down to the wire. I want to see how the AI actually justifies this. So, on policy and delivery, it was a 9-9. And the AI says Wab Kinew advanced progressive provincial reforms like pharmacare, fuel tax relief, new clinics, and housing initiatives in Manitoba. On the other hand, Mark Carney passed major national reforms like consumer tax cuts, Bill C5 for infrastructure and pipelines, and swift responses to economic disruption. So that's why that was a 9-9. On leadership and crisis, Carney won that 9-8. And the reason for that is because Carney excelled during the U.S. tariff threats. I don't know if I agree with that, you know. Well, the AI said Carney excelled during the U.S. tariff threats and Trump's annexation rhetoric. He was able to rally the public, and this led to a liberal surge, and he guided Canada through diplomatic turbulence. As I said, I don't know if I would say that Mark Carney has excelled in his negotiation with the U.S., but this is how the AI sees it. Wab Kinew handled wildfire evacuations and policy implementation smoothly, but didn't face comparable national or international crisis. So it's just based on the scale of the crisis that they faced. That's why Mark Carney has taken this. On public trust and approval, Wab Kinew is Canada's most popular premier with 68% approval and is unmatched in the provincial realm. So Wab Kinew is basically the best premier in Canada, but when you put him up against Mark Carney, he loses, is essentially what the AI is saying here. So the fight came down to this for the final verdict. Carney's decisive leadership in the national crisis, grand vision, and historical impact edges out even Wab Kinew's stellar run so far in his time as Premier of Manitoba. This AI is a lot more generous than I am, I've got to say. Like, I'm actually curious what it does with David Eby versus Doug Ford. I actually want to know now because, you know what, let's call this the losers final. This will be the battle for third place. So let's see who wins between David Eby and Doug Ford. If I were to simulate that now. Wow, it comes down to 1 point. David Eby of British Columbia beats Doug Ford in the losers final in the battle for third here. And the reason why Eby has won this, according to the AI, Eby wins on substantive governance and steady leadership, but the margin is narrow. Ford scores stronger in charisma and national visibility, but Eby's tangible policy impact and crisis competence tip the scales. So this is why David Eby has beaten Doug Ford here. Wow, interesting. Anyways, that's a wrap. It's a wrap, you guys. Canada's best premier, according to AI, is Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney. It was tight. It came down to 2 points, but Wab Kinew of Manitoba came in second. David Eby of British Columbia narrowly beats out Doug Ford for third. 1 point between those two. Do you guys agree with this order? Do you agree with this order? Who do you think deserves to be on the podium that isn't there? Let me know in the comments, okay? Thanks for joining me for this series. Maybe next time, if you guys are up for a debate, I might get you guys to champion a premier, and we'll have human-to-human debates. I will see who comes out tops, right? Might be cool. Might be cool to have you guys debate. Anyways, till next time, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Take care, you guys.